Welcome to our 5 on 5. I'm pleased to be joined by Senator Jeff Merkley in Washington, D.C. Senator, thanks for taking the time today.
You bet. It's good to be with you.
So it's great to connect with you early on in the year. It's early January. Can you share with us, share with our viewers, a preview of some of the issues you're focusing on this year?
Well, the immediate issue is to make sure that the government stays open. We have a deadline on January 19th for part of the government, February 2nd for the rest. It really takes a lot of cooperation between the two parties and the two houses. We've got some initial cooperation, but we've got to land the plane, if you will. And then apart from that, the major bills that were passed 2 years ago, the bills for infrastructure, for bringing chip manufacturing, semiconductor chip manufacturing back to the United States, for investing in renewable energy. Those major bills are still in the kind of gear up phase, the implementation phase, and Senator Wyden and I want to make sure as much of those resources get to Oregon as possible.
You're the chair of the Interior Appropriations Subcommittee. How did that position lead to change in Oregon this past year?
Well, the biggest factor was really the deep investment on forest health on the front end, that is forest management, try to reduce the risk of fires and making sure we have the funds and don't run out of funds when we're fighting fires in the fire season. I've had a lot of good partnership with the Republican from Alaska, Senator Murkowski, who's my partner on that. Our bill passed out unanimously, but that bill is for FY24 that we're in right now. That's still what has to get resolved in the current spending crisis in partnership with the House. So what we're seeing is the results of the previous year's work that we did together in those same areas.
You recently spoke at a Senate hearing about the devastation caused here in Oregon by wildfires, certainly no foreign concept to our local viewers. What is Congress doing to help alleviate these fires?
Well, the key is several factors. Of course, it depends on the particular type of forest, but in general, thinning, mowing, prescribed burns are the big three instruments. And I've really been pressing the Forest Service and BLM that we need to focus our efforts near our towns. The acreage we have is far too much to do all of it at once. So let's reduce the risk of fires at what's often called the wildland-urban interface or WUI. So let's not have any more situations like the 2020 Labor Day fires where 6 towns burned to the ground, another half dozen had major damage, horrific moment. But we're seeing drier conditions, longer fire season, more wind, more lightning strikes. So we have to really keep at this.
I know you have a vote to get to, so I'm going to power right through our commercial break and make this a one-parter. Surveys show if the election were held right now, Donald Trump would defeat Joe Biden. Why do you think that is?
That's a complete mystery to me.
All indicators suggest the American economy is strong, yet public opinion show that Americans aren't feeling it. Why is that?
Well, I do have this sense that the impact of inflation is still resonating. Even though the inflation has now come down, you go to the grocery store, you still go, wow, this is really high compared to what it was 2 years ago. And so we're still feeling that. But I was really struck when I was in rural Douglas County recently, and the unemployment rate was between 3% and 4%. In rural Oregon to have unemployment that low is really a good place to be. So it is a bit of a mystery in terms of higher employment. We have these major investments in infrastructure that are going to continue to put people to work. The stock market is at near an all-time high. So in kind of an economist's point of view, things are good. But individuals, they're looking at, those medical costs are just way too high of what we're being charged for drugs. The costs of housing are way too high. And these are things we have to tackle. It's why I'm saying we got to get the hedge funds out of the housing business, because houses need to be homes for families instead of a profit center for Wall Street. And it's why I'm saying we have to negotiate every single drug for every American, like every other developed nation, rather than just a few drugs under Medicare. Like, Americans want action on these long-standing challenges that are affecting the affordability of middle-class life in America.
Republicans have been critical of the president's handling of the southern border, saying he's downplayed, neglected, or worsened a historic migrant influx through Mexico. Is the border a problem? And if so, what are Democrats doing to fix it?
Yeah, the border is a challenge. We have a huge number of people arriving. It's overwhelming the system. It's why President Biden has proposed $14 billion to shore up security at the border, to have a lot of more CBP, Customs and Border Protection personnel, to have more asylum judges, so there's not a backlog in asylum judges. I'm afraid that some of my colleagues across the aisle actually want to keep the border in this condition as a presidential election strategy. So we need to call them out and say, partner with us in passing this legislation, getting the funds to fix the border. It's not acceptable in the current situation where the border is being overwhelmed by people asking for asylum.
You've been a strong supporter of more funding, rather, for Ukraine. As you know, continued funding is an ongoing debate in Congress. What do you think will happen, and why should Southern Oregon residents be supportive of continued funding for Ukraine?
I want people to think about the challenge in World War II, when the Prime Minister of England went to Munich and told Hitler he could take Czechoslovakia, or a big slice of Czechoslovakia. That type of Munich moment cannot be repeated. We cannot say to Putin, you can have Ukraine. To do so, of course, horrific for the freedom-loving people of Ukraine who have fought to stay out from under Russian oppression time and time again. But it also sends a signal to every dictator in the world that they can proceed to attack a democratic neighbor, and the democratic world will get tired of defending them. That will lead to a lot more trouble, a lot more war in the world. We need to stand with the democracy of Ukraine against the imperialist dictator Putin, and to do anything otherwise will be a massive mistake in foreign affairs.
Looking from the outside, it seems Congress may be more partisan than ever. You've been in office since 2009. Do you feel that way? What's it look like from the inside?
Yes, it does feel more partisan. And part of the challenge is that we used to have news media where everybody watched the same news. Or they may have watched 3 different channels when I was a kid, but they had basically the same content. We could still argue. We argued over the Vietnam War. We argued over civil rights, but we started with the same information. Now we're in a world where, between what happens on diverse television channels presenting different views of the world, reinforced by social media, sharing in many cases tons of disinformation, it really has added to the tribal polarization. It's a big problem for our country. And as one individual said to me, how am I supposed to know what to believe? I hear this over here. I hear this over here. I'm a mother. I've got kids. I don't have time to be a full-time analyst of the news. And so it's a challenge to our democracy with this changing technology.
Senator, I know you have a vote to go to. Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Take care now.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.